Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Oh, good. Yep, go
Welcome,
ahead.
everybody. Today's third session of the lunch break series on technology for forest owners. So far, we've covered Google Earth, the web soil survey yesterday, and now today we have Brendan White, who's an extension forester like myself, only he's up in Northwest Washington, to cover Plot Hound and using that for forest inventory. So we go till 12:30. I've hung out a couple times, Brendan, a little bit after to answer questions.
Yep, happy to do
But
that.
the floor is yours. Do you want me to? I'll let you decide how you want to do questions. If you want to answer them as they come, or wait till the end.
Okay, I may leave some to the end, but go ahead and type them in, and I'll see if I can answer them as we go.
Right. And as usual, please make sure that you select all panelists and attendees when you're typing into the chat box so we can all see the questions that you're asking. All right, go ahead.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to turn my video off here so you can concentrate on
Oh,
what I'm showing you. But welcome, everybody. My name is Brendan White with WSU Extension Forestry. And I'm going to be talking a little bit today about using Plot Hound to go out and both make select your plot locations if you're wanting to cruise your property or do a little survey of your property, and then also potentially use it to enter your data. So Plothound's a very handy set of, well, it's an app and a desktop uh, uh, web app, and can be a little bit confusing when you first start using it because you actually have to use both the mobile app on whatever mobile device you're using as well as the desktop web app, and both of them serve different functions within Plothound. So it can be a powerful tool, but a little bit confusing starting out. So your first step is to find the Sylvia Terra Plothound website here. And you'll soon discover that you have to type in Sylvia Terra Plothound into Google to get here, because there's an actual breed of dog called a Plothound. And since it's the internet, people's pets tend to dominate search results. So just make sure you type in Sylvia Terra Plothound as well as or Sylvia Terra as well as Plothound to find this. Once you're here, you can get started with a free account and then log in. And I already have some cruises in here, so there's a bit of information showing. But up here at the top is where you can navigate around the Plothound website. So the first thing you'll generally do is go to create a stand. And here is where Plothound really excels and becomes a very useful tool for many of you. So you can use this, like I said, to do a fairly complete timber cruise in most of your cases. I imagine you're going to be doing something along the lines of what we teach in our forest stewardship coach planning classes, sort of more of a surface level survey of your forest, still trying to be as scientific and unbiased as possible to get a good idea of what you're managing. You're not doing a full cruise of your merchantable timber. So some of the ways that Plothound will sort of try and push you in terms of the methodology, you may not follow exactly, and you can be a little less exacting in your number of plots and your data quality. And in the case of those of you who actually would want to go out and do a timber sale, you probably still would want to hire someone to come and do a professional timber cruise before you make any major financial decisions. But for just doing a basic cruise as a landowner in order to get a good idea of what's on your property and what you're managing so that you can manage it properly, this is a fantastic tool. So here, the first page, when you go to create a cruise, you're going to type in your name. So I'm going to call this Office Forest. This is our Snohomish Mill Creek office. You can put a tag here if you want to be able to find it by searching a tag later. So I have a test tag I can add. And then you can zoom in on the Plothound map here in order to create your first plot. So you can see as you zoom in, they've got pretty decent imagery. And this is where, so I'm going to make a plot. Sorry, I am using a trackpad here. It's a little bit easier with a mouse. But so I'm going to make a stand out of this patch of forest here in McCollum Park. And it's a fairly mature Douglas fir stand with a little bit of cedar. It differs quite a bit from the forest on the south edge here that starts getting into a wetter, more mixed conifer hardwood area. So I'm going to call this section here one stand. And to create the stand, you can either make a polygon or just a simple square or a rectangle. So if you have a perfectly square property, you can just use this tool to designate your stand. But in most cases, it's not letting me, there we go. Why is this not letting me? Oh, there we go. Yeah, this is an awkward part of the tool on. So you can drag this around, you can edit it and save it. You can also, you should be able to delete here, but it's not letting me do that. So what I'm going to do is go back and just recreate this stand. You know, like I said, there are some slight idiosyncrasies with this program. But like I said, in most cases, most of you can be using this polygon tool. So again, you zoom into your forest stand. And using the polygon tool, you can get a more exact edge on where your actual stand is. So this lets you create a polygon with more than 4 sides. And you can drag the map around while you're using it. I'm not going to be super exact here, but you can get the basic idea. And you can create that stand. Once you have it looking how you want it to, you can click create, and it takes you to the next page here. So now that you have the stand here, you can create as many cruises within this stand as you want. And for those of you who are starting to forget some coach planning terminology or haven't been to our classes before, a cruise is what we call a survey of trees and timber on your property. So when you hear in forestry people saying cruises, that's what we're talking about. So here you can go click on create cruise, and this is where it starts getting a little bit more detailed. All of this on the left is a fantastic tool if you're trying to get an actual, industry standard timber cruise on your property. You can estimate a large or small amount of variation. In the case of this stand, it's not that variable. It's a pretty even stand. So I'm going to put it at 0.25 variation. If you have a property that's all 30-year-old even age Douglas fir with nothing else, you could probably pop this down to 0.15. If you had a really variable mixed conifer hardwood stand, you might increase that. And how much error you're willing to accept, how much confidence you want, etc. You can play with this as much as you want. Your sampling method, this is probably the most important thing that most of you want to change. So get a good idea, and you can change this out on the ground as well. But for many of you, you'll probably be using about a 1/20th of an acre. Again, that's going to vary depending on your forest. You want somewhere between 8 to 10, 7 to 12-ish trees in each of your plots. So get a good idea of how dense your forest is, and then choose your plot size based on that. Cruiser, I'm going to select myself, Brendan White, and it's going to suggest, based on these parameters, we recommend you install 18 plots. So in that case, you put that and create a grid, and it creates this grid of plots for you on the property. Now you can see there's a few different methods. There's hexagon, there's square, there's rectangle, there's random. So if I select random and create grid, they're just randomly selected everywhere or randomly placed everywhere. So this is where it's a really handy tool for you to actually just, even if you're only using this part and not using its data collection capabilities, you can use it to place your plots on the ground in a systematic way. So I like the hexagon generally. You can also, one thing you might adjust on yours, you can, the stand inner buffer is the distance, the minimum distance between where it'll place a plot from the edge of your property. So you might put, it'll depend on the size of plot you selected, but say 30 feet. Oh, I just hit enter. So I just created this stand and this cruise on that stand. And now I can use this to, on the Plothound app on my phone, to go out and find each one of these plots. And this is where this app really shines for most of you. It's just being able to go out there and find these on the ground in a systematic way without introducing bias on where you place your plots. So once you have this cruise created for the stand, that's when you can actually go to your mobile device and go find these plots on the ground. So I'm going to switch over to some screenshots that I took from my phone yesterday. So you can't actually enter any data in the web app. You have to enter data in the mobile app. You also can't create stands, which we just did. You can't create stands, and you can't create cruises in the mobile app. You have to do that on the web app. So you have to go back and forth between the two as you're using it. So again, these first two steps we did, creating the stand, creating the cruise, you have to do through the web application, and then actually taking the data you have to do through the mobile app. So this is what it's going to look like when you first log into the mobile application. Jim, yes, Jim asks, can you locate plots if you don't have connectivity? Yes, it relies on GPS. So your phone doesn't have to have any mobile connection in order to use the GPS on your phone. As long as you have the map data downloaded, this is true in Google Maps or any other mapping thing on your phone, your GPS is a passive receiver looking for those satellites up above. And it doesn't rely at all on a mobile connection. And this app here, as you can see here, is designed so that you can download the cruise info and then upload it when you are actually within data range or connected to Wi-Fi. So this will be the first screen you see. You won't see that cruise that you created yet until you actually click on the download cruise info. And then once you click on that, you'll see this. You have one cruise, it has 6 or however many plots you created. And at this point, you could just walk out into the woods and it doesn't matter if you lose connectivity. One thing that's good to do before you go out into the woods, though, is click on this little settings wheel up here in the corner and download the map tiles that actually go with your cruise and stand area. So select whether you not want topographic, aerial, or none, and then just click download base imagery and use downloaded tiles. And that way, even when you go out into the woods with no connectivity, you will still have a map background in the app as you're using it. So once you've done that, you can click on the green button there, the view cruise list, and you'll see, in this case, I only have one cruise. This will pop up. And my example cruise I was doing was Schmitz Park by me here in West Seattle. And then once you click on that cruise, you'll see this view, and that's all the plots you have within that cruise. Up at the top here, you'll see there's the map option. If you click that, you'll see the actual map of the area. And at this point, if you have your GPS on your phone and you're within this map area, you'll see yourself on the map. I'll ask a question. The mobile website is telling me it doesn't cover my property, Skagit County. Is this a glitch or does it not come this far north? I don't, the mobile website or the, I'm not sure what you mean by a mobile website. Let's get into that a bit at the end because I've never run into that before.
Yeah, I'll try that on my computer real quick too.
Yeah, give that a try. So at this point, I've walked into Schmitz Park with my mobile device and I have my GPS on, and you can see where it has the arrow on the ground there. I'm going to approach my plot number 4 because that's the nearest to the entry to the park. And if you click on that plot, it will show your distance from it, your bearing, direction, etc. And at any point you can edit your plot. And you can also, one of the problems with this method of finding plots is that GPSs and our relatively cheap civilian GPSs aren't particularly accurate on the ground, especially not under a forest canopy. So it's very easy for you as a human individual to introduce some bias in that last step of actually deciding where on the ground your plot point is. So if you're using GPS like this to find your plot points, I would suggest using some sort of final randomization to decide on the actual plot center. Because you'll get out there and you'll know that you're somewhere within 30 feet of the plot center and you'll just have to decide. And that's a really easy place to introduce some bias into your sampling that you want to avoid. So at this point, you could maybe download a random number generator and use it to say, I want to go a random number of steps forward and then a random number of steps left, 90 degrees left or right, your choice. And then when you get to that point, that number of steps, you stop right there and that's your plot center. You can also hold something that throwable in your hand, close your eyes, spin around, throw it over your shoulder as hard as you can, and wherever it lands, that's your plot center. Something to keep that plot center random and not influenced by your biases. But so whenever you decide where that plot center is going to be, you can then click this button at the bottom that says Save GPS Location, and that will actually record that this plot got moved slightly to that new location. So once you actually either edit or save, once you save that location and edit the plot, you'll see this view. So this is the plot data. There's no trees added. You can, at this point, change the sampling size if you need to. If you've decided that you were wrong initially on what plot size you needed, you can change that. You can take a note. And then you can click here on Add New Tree. So here you can enter the species at the top. You can enter the species. So I've put a Douglas fir here. And then you can enter the diameter, breast height, total height, merchantable height in feet if you want to. You can also leave any of these blank if you need to. Now entering this is a little bit funny. When you enter a number, you'll have to enter the number and then select it from the numbers that pop up below. So you can see I've typed in 123 there, 123, and then I actually need to tap on this 123 down here to enter that number. So that's a little bit finicky in this app. Once you've entered sort of your most important data, for most of you, like I said, you're not going to be doing an actual merchantable timber cruise. So these 3 or 4, including the species data, are going to be the most important for you. So there is a place to add notes, but this is another place where this app may fall down a little bit for some of you. It's very prescribed in what you can actually record here. So some of you might be interested in invasive species cover, in snags, or understory species, etc. And there's nowhere for you to enter that. So if you're really interested in a lot of non-standard, non-merchantable timber statistics, you may not want to actually gather your data through this app. Or you may be only gathering your canopy tree species data through this app, and then you also have a notepad with you where you're recording other data. And for some of you, you may just use the mapping ability to actually put your plots on the ground and then find them through the GPS of this. And then all of your data recording might be on your own personal data sheet. So you can add as many trees as you want here. And then once you're ready, you hit complete plot. Once you have completed plots, you can go back to the main screen in the app. And when you're ready to, when you either have a data connection or you're connected to your Wi-Fi, you can click this upload cruise data button. At that point, you will go back to your desktop application. So like I said, you have to switch a bit in between. So once you're back in your desktop application, you can go up here, click cruises and stands, and you'll find your completed cruise and stand. So in this case, here's one that I completed. Well, I just made up the numbers, but I completed it on that McCollum section of McCollum Park there by the office. And it'll give you some basic statistics here at the top. So trees per acre, 132, basal area, 299. And it gives you a little bit of information, not a whole lot. You know, if there's unfamiliar terms in here, you may need to look them up and Google them. Quadratic mean diameter is another statistic. And then down here, it gives you some imagery that you can use, and or some charts that you can use. So here you can see while I was out there, I did a general grade of whether or not the boles of the trees were saw logs, poles, chip and saw. As you can see, I've marked almost all of them saw logs, and this is volume per acre over here, and that's in tons. You can also get some nice graphs here of your tree species per acre and their diameter at breast height. So you can see here this stand consisted of quite a few large, fairly mature Douglas fir up in the 20 to 35-inch diameter range. And then there was a younger cohort of, or at least a smaller cohort of Western red cedar coming in underneath, with a bit of Western hemlock that had come in between. So I really had sort of 3 distinct cohorts of trees here. Again, you can more graphs for the species. So this is just a plot of how many trees per acre at different diameter classes there were for Western hemlock. Major species group, it was all softwoods. I didn't record any hardwoods. So that's all species total. Douglas fir, again, almost all the Douglas fir were quite large. Western red cedar, almost all of them were fairly small in diameter. And we're back to the beginning again here. So if you do enter your data here, it does generate some pretty handy charts for you. Again, it may not have the data entry capabilities that you want, and you may only be using it to actually make the plot maps and find those plots on the ground. But if you do choose to use it for at least part of your data, it can be quite handy. You can also then download cruise report, the basic report, and I believe the basic report comes as it's an Excel spreadsheet. So basically, the cruise report and the cruise report you can download, and all of your data that you entered you can have in Excel, and then you can merge it into whatever other analyses or graphs you want to make. You can also, I think on Monday you had a class on using Google Earth. Is that right, Patrick? Earlier this week, yes. But you can download the KML file here and very easily add that to your Google Earth map. So if you want it, it's fairly simple. It just takes this polygon that I made, the blue outline here, and just places it into Google Earth. But that's a good way to merge it with what you learned earlier this week.
I didn't know that. Does it also, but it takes the plot points too, or just the polygon?
It only adds the polygon,
Okay.
unfortunately, and no other data associated with it.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's still useful.
Yeah, still useful. So, and you wouldn't have to measure any data in order to do that. Again, you could just create the stand and you can download the KML. You don't have to take any of your data within PlotHound. All right, and that brings us to the end of our very quick 25 minutes on PlotHound. So let's get to some of these questions here. Did we figure out Holly's question about her region?
I think so. I think it may have been the issues that she was using the phone.
Okay.
But
yeah.
The web's like the browser on her phone.
Right.
The app itself. Yeah.
So I think you may just need to go through the desktop. Jim asks, is it possible to plot large trees via variable plot and small trees via a fixed area plot, or would those need to be separate cruises? I don't believe there is a way to do a variable plot size in PlotHound. I mean, you might be able to, you can adjust the plot size. No, if you were gonna try and get a bit fancier like that, I wouldn't use PlotHound to record the data. I think it'd be very easy to either make a mistake in there or confuse yourself. And if you're going to be using variable plots, I would just do it the old-fashioned way with some waterproof paper. Mary asks, sorry, oh, that wasn't a question. Glad you could join us, Mary. Todd Brown, can you print a map of the specific tree locations? No, you can't. That would be really cool. That would be a very, very cool addition to this. It only records them as being in those plot centers. And it doesn't actually, you can't record an actual GPS location for the individual tree. Linda asks, what's a KML file? A KML file is the Google specific geographic polygon file. So if you're familiar with GIS programs, which are basically computer mapping programs, a common ArcGIS file is called a shape file, and Google has a similar type of file that they call a KML file.
And I think I failed to mention that on Monday. Okay. But yeah, KML is what Google Earth uses.
Yes. Paul asked if there was a link to the Monday class. Patrick, have you been?
Yeah, I typed it in there. I will be sending the links to all the classes out probably Monday or Tuesday next week.
All right. John asks, I have shape files for trails locations on my land. Can I include these in defining the stands in PlotHound? No, there's no way to import shape files into PlotHound, into that base map. You know, you could use those shape files in another GPS program and then export the shape file from PlotHound and overlay the stand. But again, it doesn't export the plot locations either. You'd have to manually transfer the latitude and longitude of those plot locations. Emil asks, so once you specify the exact real center of the plot, how do you determine the borders of the plot to start noting all the trees? That gets into a much longer, at least hour-long class on actual mensuration techniques. But basically, you're either going to use some sort of measuring tape from that plot center. If you have a laser measuring system that has a short minimum distance that it'll measure, that's also very handy when you're doing it. But when it comes down to it, you need to have some sort of measuring tape out on the ground. Dean asks, how much does PlotHound cost? Nothing. It is a free program, Dean.
Also, I just put in a link to a publication
for yes. So
basic forest inventory techniques.
Emil, take a look at that publication that Patrick just posted, and that goes into much more detail on the rest of measuring everything you need to measure on in your plots and on your property. And that's a really handy publication.
Yeah, it's a big topic. We could spend
Yeah.
an hour and a half at least.
Yeah, exactly. It's
hard
to
to day
get
outside too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, that's been the quick and dirty introduction to Plot Hound. Does anyone else have any last questions?
12:30 on the dot. That is impressive, Brendan.
Yes, I rehearsed this over and over again to get the timing perfect.
Matt's got a question here.
All right. What kind of professional would perform an official cruise? A consulting forester. And where would do you want to get that link? So we have a forestry contractor database on our website where people have registered their different forestry related contracting companies. A lot of them are consulting foresters, and any of those consulting foresters would be able to do a timber cruise.
Great. Well, if there's
Right.
not any other questions, let's thank Brendan for joining us for lunch today. That was great. Like I mentioned, this will be recorded. If you came in late, I'll send those out next week, all in one big suite, so you can maybe watch them all at once. And otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow. We'll be talking about the forest practices, the DNR forest practices map. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Brendan.